Welcome back to the big issue on 97.3 City FM and also City TV. My name is Godfred Akotoba. We're currently discussing the e-levy. It doesn't seem to go away. The government is on a roadshow. Like I said, the IMF came up this week when the finance minister ended up in Tamale, conclusively stating government's position that they will not resort to the IMF. He says Ghana is too proud and that they have homegrown solutions to deal with those problems. I've been having the conversation with Franklin Kujo, Dr. Patrick Opoku-Assuming, who I'll get to. We're having a bit of a technical hitch. We've heard already from Dr. Stephen Amo, a member of Parliament for Inshaeso. So you have the floor for another 10 minutes and then I'll move on.
So,
another 10
Godfred,
minutes.
as I was saying, when you look at the numbers, we look at the economy, you will hear the finance minister, for example, tell you that one of our problems is that, and I think Stika also repeated the point on this set, and you try to intervene, that our tax, rate to GDP is that low, and that we need to increase, how much you tax. You made the point about it being common with rich countries. But again, for me, there is a certain hypocrisy in it, in that argument, which I will speak to later. But the fact remains that Ghana is not doing badly at all compared to, our peers in the region. In fact, Ivory Coast is 13.2. We are around 14%. Nigeria is doing 6.1%.
We are not 14.
We're
12.
14.
Go and check.
We're 14.
12.
The finance minister has been saying 12. But
12.
other
No,
the OECD
12.
countries by the World Bank, it puts us at 14%.
12.
But the finance minister has been saying 12.
So they have better data than finance minister.
It's okay.
So
please.
it's fine. That's not the argument. The argument is that we are not doing so bad compared to our peers. Because, like I said, Nigeria is doing 6.1%. And if you are doing, 12 or 14%, that's not bad. But the hypocrisy I speak of is the fact that this was the same finance minister,
Not giving freebies.
the same finance minister,
They don't do all
who
we are doing that.
I'm sure knew about this. The fact that our tax, to GDP is low, went on the streets and demonstrated against tax implementations and introductions. The same finance minister demonstrated against a government that tried to increase the tax threshold. So today, when he tells you that, there's need to increase the tax rate to GDP, you wonder when he found that relevant to do. Was it just being opposed for opposition's sake or for power's sake that he was doing it? But his understanding of the economics would have told him then that perhaps the government of the day was struggling with some things and needed to increase tax. But he just wanted to oppose those introductions. But that's by the way. Look, the NDC did something. Between 2013 and 2014, when President Mahama was hit with the economic crisis, that came about as a result of the single spine salary structure distorting our revenue, utilization, and cocoa prices plummeting, gold prices went down that year, then oil prices skyrocketed. So you had these four problems. The single spine salary structure, remember, it led to, in some cases, some workers having their salaries being doubled. But it also threw out of gear our finances. And that was why President Mahama spoke of we all eating the meat and leaving the bones. And so there was a need for us to sit around the table and discuss a way out. The Royal Senchi consensus was called. The MPP boycotted. I will assure them that he may not do that if they call one. The MPP boycotted it. The only person who attended that consensus, workshop was Kwame Mpianim. And up till today, he's still suffering for attending that, workshop. But the point is, at that workshop, Ghana came out with our own homegrown policies. And it was these homegrown policies, and Franklin will agree, that was taken to the IMF for policy credibility. Why? Because at the time, thanks to the opposition and maybe other, commentators, the reputation of the country and government had been so badly battered that international investors did not have confidence when the government said they were going to implement this recovery program. So it needed the backing of the World Bank. And so, if you recall, Ghana didn't get up to 1 billion from even the World Bank. It was less, it was about 940 million Ghana cedis. So it was just for the credibility. So when you hear the finance minister speak today, that we can do it, we are capable of doing it, he's speaking the language President Mahama has been speaking and asking the government to do, because he's been there and he did it. So yes, we can do it. But you see,
e-levy is one of those solutions.
You see, that is why I'm saying that you need engagement. That's why we are saying let's call a roundtable discussion, a workshop. Let's brainstorm, come up with policies. But you see, at the end of the day, our credibility per the rating agencies has been so battered that we will need somewhat of a grantor. And that is why some people say that going to the IMF is almost inevitable. Even when you adopt your homegrown solutions, remember, Godfred, it was that homegrown, program that the IMF adopted that took us out of the woods, such that by 2016, the EIU, the World Bank, and others started projecting a positive outlook for our economy. Remember that they even projected that by 2017, our GDP was going to grow by 8%. And so when the MPP comes to power, and then 2017 year end, they post a GDP growth of 7%. Plus, it is not entirely their hard work or their, managerial acumen that led to that 7-point-something% growth. Because it was projected based on the work that had been done even before they won power. But yes, you can give them credit for maintaining the programs that they came to meet. Why? Even the IMF program, they extended it because they saw wisdom in it. But then it led to the recovery of the economy. Unfortunately, the MPP, when they inherited that recovery, started behaving like the child whose father has left him so much wealth. And he does not have the discipline to maintain and grow that wealth, but goes to town to party with Kenke and fly in expensive jets. And so gets all the wealth inherited, the recovery inherited, blown away, and then comes back to family members to contribute so that at least he can still live a wealthy life. That is why we are where we are today. It is that behavior that has brought us to where we are today, where they are chasing 6.7 billion. Because if they had maintained the program, which was beginning to, lead to recovery, and if they had pruned their appetite, managed expenditure better, trust me, why, Godfred, this is the luckiest government in our history in terms of resources. In terms of resources, they have had more resources than any other government in our history. Look, I'll just share with you what Osafo Marfo said.
Quickly, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, quickly. The former finance minister and then senior minister, when he was appointed in 2017, he said, "We are extremely heavily indebted, but not poor. The economy is fundamentally very strong. It is the management that has been a problem." When he said we were heavily indebted, our debt was about 122 billion. Our revenue was not as much as they have now. In fact, the revenue now has more than tripled the revenue we had at the time when he said this. But today, our debt is over 300 billion. despite the huge windfalls that they have had. So he said that the economy was fundamentally strong when they took over, that the problem was with the management. So if you took over a fundamentally strong economy and you profess to have better management, and God being so good, you have more resources than the poor manager, how come that today unemployment has worsened, the debt situation has worsened, the exchange rate has worsened? How come? What did you do with your better skills and with your better resources?
Your point, we'll leave that question for another time. Let me talk to Dr. Patrick Opoku-Assuming. Hopefully you'll come in, don't worry.
We've given him twice my time.
No, I
just
did not.
time is here. Check.
You haven't given
Can
him
you
that
let
time.
us have the
He
proper
started
flow?
9.46.
And ended at 58.
Check.
Yes, I know. And has now finished at 13. So put the time together.
Hey,
Dr. Patrick Opoku.
check mine.
Dr. Patrick Opoku-Assuming, good morning.
Good morning and good morning to viewers.
I think the connection is much better now. So I'm sure you've listened to the entire conversation, and I come to you from the academic side. I said I spoke to a colleague of yours from the University of Ghana Business School who said he finds that there's nothing wrong with the e-levy, but perhaps the government can shape it better to get what they want. We've also heard the finance minister say, look, we don't need the IMF to be able to do this. We can navigate this path on our own. From where you sit, are you convinced that this is the panacea to our problems?
Thank you. So the short answer for me will be no. But I think let's put everything in a little bit of context.
Okay.
We all know that the government needs to raise a lot more revenue. And this issue about expanding our tax bracket has been with us for a long time. I've always applauded the current government for how it has approached that problem. And that is the digitization measures that we've been doing for the past 5 years. So in terms of the broad strategy, the medium to long-term strategy, that will be effective for broadening the tax base. I think that's what we've been doing for a while. We all know it will be medium term. So in the short term, the government needs to find other ways of raising more revenue while we get that to bear fruit. And you see that over the years, the government has tried one or two measures. So we had the luxury vehicle tax. Then there was a point where they tried to raise the tax rate at the upper end. It appears that the government has been a little bit too sensitive to some specific interest groups. And then even though those ideas were fundamentally sound in terms of raising more revenue, they were rolled back. Then fast forward, we have COVID, and then COVID has already changed the picture a little bit because it means that the government has not been able to raise as much revenue. And then there's also been COVID-induced spending. That has actually worsened our government finances. So it's obvious that in the midst of all of this, we need to find more clever ways of expanding the tax bracket while we wait for the medium-term measures to break in the revenue we expect. But, for me, I think the e-levy, a number of measures have been proposed. Even in the last budget, there were several measures. For me, the e-levy is not one of the soundest ones that we could use. Perhaps we could fall on some of the other things that were contained in the budget. So first of all, you have to wonder why the government appears to be dilly-dallying in terms of rolling back the benchmark values. Again, it appears that it's being too sensitive to an arguably very powerful a very powerful lobby, which is the GUTA. Then you also have to think about the exemptions. Mm-hmm. The exemptions that has been discussed. And by the way, when we were in the last IMF program, the exemptions was a topic for discussion. And yet we didn't take any action. To be fair, the current government has tried to bring in a bill. I think initially brought in something and it was taken back. But now in the current budget again, it was promised that the exemptions bill will be brought back. So I think if you focus on the exemptions and you're able to break in a lot more, because in 2019, the president spoke and said that at that point, the exemptions alone were costing the economy over $2.4 billion. Even if it is still the same. And we are able to pass an exemptions bill that allows us to even rake in half of that amount. That would be more than we need, or more than we are going to collect with the e-levy. So there's that part. Then there's also the property taxes that was mentioned. And we know that, for me, property taxes is one of the easier ones that we should be collecting, especially now that we've done digitizing properties and their locations.
But it seems to be the hardest one for the government to pass. It rarely gets discussed.
Which is something I struggle to understand. The government is burning so much political capital arguing on why we need it. And yet, as far as I'm concerned, the other measures that they themselves mentioned, they look like it will be much more easier to pass, and they will face relatively lower resistance. And frankly, if you compare the e-levy, what is potential impact in terms of our other development objectives, that those other measures don't have those inconsistency issues, because we've been trying to make the economy cash-light, and we've been trying to promote financial inclusion. And you notice that participation in the mobile money market is one of the quickest means that we've managed to bring a lot more people into participation into the financial sector. So for me, the e-levy as it stands, at the moment it's being made to look like the e-levy will be the single bullet solution to our problems, which we all know that it isn't. In any case, the other things that are in the budget, they will break in probably more revenue from more revenue than the e-levy, without the other repercussions, the discussion about the e-levy, whether it's really people opposing it. I think the arguments that have been made that the e-levy will help us bring more people of the informal sector into the tax bracket, I don't think, for me, it doesn't hold much water. If it's true, there may be some people who are doing base business who are not in the tax bracket that the e-levy will bring in, but it also comes at the expense of double or multiple taxing people who are already paying their due. So in terms of bringing the informal sector into the tax-paying bracket, I don't think the e-levy is necessarily the best way to go. Then there's been a lot of discussion about what we should do with the expenditure side. Mm-hmm. And the finance ministry has announced that there will be 20% cut in expenditure. And over the week, the deputy finance minister has been explaining what sort of things will be cut. For me, I look at how this has been done, and again, it doesn't look like that's going to be the solution to that problem. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be cutting expenditure, but we read the budget late November. And then we were convinced that we've gone through all the processes and all these expenditure items were needed. Suddenly, we get downgraded by a rating agency, and then we announce apparently a knee-jerk reaction to cut expenditures by 20%. Now, if you look at the items the bigger items in our expenditure bracket, at the moment, number one is the interest payment, and we cannot cut our interest payment. We have to settle our interest obligations. Number two is compensation, and the government was not going to renege on its paying its workers. That's not going to happen. Then the other items left, we have capital expenditure, and then consumption of goods and services. So frankly, if you say you are going to cut 20%, it looks like the things that will help the economy grow in the medium to long term is what you are going to cut. And then you have to question why that would be an effective strategy. We all understand that the government revenue, the government expenditures need to be rationalized a little bit, but I think it would be more helpful to give us a little bit more detail about specific things that we feel that at the moment we can cut, and that will help us. Now, on the question about whether it's e-levy or the IMF, I mean, if you look at the indicators, some of the indicators we currently have, they are not that different from the last time we went to the IMF. If you look at the tax to GDP, the debt to GDP, if you look at the size of the deficit, if you look at the fraction of our revenue that we use to service the debt, all of them are similar or sometimes worse than the conditions that took us to the IMF. Obviously, for political reasons, the government is unlikely, at least in the short term, to go to the IMF. But we also know what will happen when we go to the IMF. We are going to be asked to raise more revenue, and we are going to ask to be tighten our belts on the expenditure side. So the question is, without going to the IMF, whether the government is committed to doing those things that need to be done. You know, you have to remember that before we went to the IMF, before we went to the last IMF program, you know, there was some discussion in the months or so before, and then we were told that we are not going to the IMF. Eventually, we did. So for me, unless the government, you know, goes back and show, the finance minister goes back and show us specific, credible, and believable strategies that we can all believe in, that when we do this, it will solve our debt challenges and it will solve our growth challenges and our public finances, then it appears that, you know, we may be talking that we won't go, but we might end up going. But, you know, the IMF is not our solution. We've gone to the IMF many times. And, you know, usually when we go to the IMF, we bring a little bit more discipline to our finances and the economy stabilizes a little bit. But what needs to happen going forward in terms of translating that into building a more resilient and robust economy, it doesn't happen. We've been doing this for long. We only came out of an IMF program, and suddenly we are clamoring for going back to the IMF. So, in principle, I agree when the finance minister says we shouldn't go to the IMF. But at the same time, he has to tell us that the hard decisions that we need to make to ensure that the economy does well without going to the IMF are done. At the moment, I think there's too much emphasis on the e-levy. But unfortunately, the e-levy doesn't, from where I sit, is not the solution to our current challenges.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick Opoku-Assuming, for those thoughts. So I will do the final round on this, starting with Sticker. And then, okay, let me, Franklin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. So, sorry, I'll start the final round on this from you as we did the first round, and then we'll wrap up this conversation quickly. So you've heard from all the parties involved on this. Finally, ending with Dr. Patrick Opoku, Assuming's thoughts on, he seems to say it basically depends on the finance minister cracking the whip on what needs to be done. But the situation is we are between a rock and a hard place. We need to raise revenue. The government also needs to be able to spend something to be able to achieve some of the things that it really wants to do.
You know, one of the things I suspect that could have happened, and probably to convince everybody about the e-levy. And Sika, don't get some of us wrong at all. We are not opposed to raising taxes using tax revenue for development. I think in the current milieu and the contestation over the e-levy.
I didn't get him. Oh no, ask him to.
No. I was just saying that don't get it quite twisted that some of us are against government policy to rein in revenues or at all costs. Not at all. And I'm trying to say that, and I'm tying my comments to Akoto's question. You know, one of the things that would have made it easier for this government to sell the e-levy idea would have been if they have done their own sort of analysis, value for money analysis, to say that the many billions of dollars we invested in initiatives like one district, one factory, one village, one dam, 3 SHS, and all those other interventions that they introduced had yielded some fruits. I think it becomes much less convincing to do when people are being told that, look, this is exactly what we've done with the money we get pumping into these initiatives. And then we would understand that even though the economy had grown from $5 billion in 2000 to almost $65 billion in 2022, which is almost a 13-fold increase, people would have been assured that, look, we're actually making progress. But if every now and then we seem to be scampering and saying, oh, we are not getting enough revenue, we need to do big things, I think for me, the bigger question would have been, how are we assessing the various initiatives of government, not just this government, the previous government as well? And I think we need a dispassionate, independent, if you like, non-partisan analysis of that, something we intend to do, by the way. But I think until the government itself has shown enough proof that all these initiatives, like I keep saying, I think the problem with this government, this administration, is that they expended way too much during their first tenure. And unfortunately, when COVID happened, well, we were scampering all over the place. But of course, there's also the contestation that COVID had brought in a lot of revenues anyway. So however you look at it, there's a need to have a dispassionate conversation about the agenda of building a Ghana beyond aid. Let's interrogate the agenda so far. What has happened in the first term? Did we spend money wisely? Were we getting value for money? Why is it that after almost 20 years of growing the economy from $5 billion to 60 billion, we are still having perennial challenges of unemployment? All the negative growth that we are experiencing, the characteristics that we are experiencing. Why? And I suspect once you're able to answer those questions, maybe the conversations about IMF are actually secondary. You know, last week I told Bernard that we tend to go to the IMF only when we are at our wit's end. But that shouldn't be the case. And IMF should not be seen like some kakai, because to be true be told, there are various programs that could be assessed on the IMF. And so going to the IMF does not necessarily mean you are going to do an enhanced credit facility program, as we've always done. The 16 times we've been there is only when things have gone so bad. But the IMF has a number of packages. I mean, people have suggested, for instance, the rapid finance instrument could have been another approach, which other countries have utilized anyway. I mean, people say that while the finance minister says the economy is so robust and everything is going well, then there are other packages within the IMF that you could actually approach the IMF and get billions of dollars for. I mean, there are countries that have gone to the IMF not because they were at their wit's end, but also because they wanted to take advantage of the added benefits. So, unfortunately, the conversation now is that, well, if you don't take care, you need to go to the IMF because, as we speak, the twin devils of every government, escalating expenditure and runaway debts, have not left us at all. So we need to have a dispassionate conversation, which conversation we must have devoid of partisan bickering. But of course, you can also not take away the politics, because as I said not too long ago, it is exactly the posture of trying to edge one other party into government, which leads to this cyclical nature of apportioning blame. It's unfortunate that we've done so much, but we are seeing not much at all. So I think that ball goes back to all of us. Of course, we, the independents, we like to call ourselves independent, but we like to see things from our standpoint. But government has the much harder task of convincing everybody that, look, in spite of the billions of dollars we invested in these initiatives in the first term, we got you this. I think the finance minister tried to say something like that. I was almost lamenting why free SHS students were against the e-levy.
Yeah.
That kind of introspection is needed. You need to show people that when you build the dam for 250,000 Ghana cedis, it shouldn't have cost that much. It should have been 30,000. What did you do with the remainder of the money? You see, from that standpoint, this conversation about paying extra tax would have been far, far easier. Because as it's told, nobody likes to pay extra tax when they don't see what necessarily has been the tax has been utilized for. So government communication should not be across purposes. And I think, Sticker, you need to do a hard job of convincing everybody. The numbers you talk about, we all know them. Use it to tell your story. Tell us the story. And let's make sure that the story is being told in a very frank manner to warrant this tax. But as everybody is saying across the table, including Professor Asumi, let's not make it look as if the e-levy is the only panacea. We've had tremendous amount of money, and there's the need to show what the money has been used for.
Thank you. So, Sticker, listening to Franklin, basically the question he's asking is, you have to show working.
Thank you.
You have 6 minutes.
Please give me more than that.
You have 6 minutes.
I think
so show working.
The way Franklin and then the doctor spoke, some of their statements, I agree with them, especially the doctor. Some of them I also have different opinion. And I also want Franklin to understand that I'm not what I said meant or meaning they are against government policy. No. This issue about taxation in production that I said probably is being misconstrued by the state, I mean a section of stakeholders, but then please, I think this government demonstrated in the area of education. I didn't know we were doing this, but I brought them. In the area of health and all the areas, what we have done and achieved. I mean, tangibles, they were there. I mean, I think we need to put them again. I understand, Franklin, probably the communication has not gone down well for people to appreciate. Because if you listen to Franklin, the figures, he did not argue against the figures I gave, or trying to say that in terms of economic parameters, we done better. He said he knows, which means it is a fact. But he went further to say that, okay, show more work with these figures, which I agree with him. So it's the onus is on the government now to let people see, probably speak more to these issues. My brother, we were actually entangled with this IMF stuff. 2016, what happened? With the IMF, what happened? We're growing around 3.2, 3.4 with the IMF. With the IMF, our interest rate jumped back to almost 40%. Our reserve declined in this country. So the IMF is not panacea. It is not a decision to say that Ghana's economy will do well or not. But I'm not also against other people who are saying that, okay, probably for temporarily or in the short term, if you have issues, you can actually go for this temporary short whatever or mitigation. That's their view. But for how long and for how many times countries such as Ghana with all these endowed resources always have to rely on a third body? So if IMF hadn't existed, what would happen to us? I think these are issues.
So why do you contribute to the IMF then? We contribute, right? Because you have to contribute to be able to go for money.
But what I'm saying, they come with their conditionalities.
I know.
Look what happened. When their brothers went for credit, credibility policy, whatever. Between 2012 and 2016. Yes. I mean, they are commutative anyway. Between 2012 and 2016, what happened? They had to freeze public sector employment. It is a fact. Is that good for us? You think that couldn't have contributed immensely towards, even apart from COVID, probably our GDP issues? Because GDP, of course, apart from what the government is doing in the short term, also has preceding issues. And even he said it, my brother here. So what I'm saying is that with all these things, let us accept the fact that IMF, it is time that, as Kwame Nkrumah said, black man is capable of whatever in own affairs. We try to do things on our own, even when there are crises or when there's crisis. In any case, my brother said that our behavior, but whichever way, our behavior put NHIS back on track. They were taking NHIS back to cash and carry. Whether you have issues with efficiency or effectiveness of free SHS, my brother, but for free SHS, over 100,000 young ones would have been home. This is a fact. About 100,000 teachers have been employed. I was in the same parliament with him when all these figures were churned up and nobody could argue. What we are saying is that we have to understand the times in which we are. One doctor made a very fantastic point that he said, in fact, if I got him right, all the figures that made us go to IMF are the same today. I disagree. Because things that IMF conditional loans, what I qualify you for. One, you talk about monetary and credit aggregates. That is the asset size of the banks. The banks today are far better than we took over. Banks are making about over 100% profit. The industry, go and check. I'm not saying all is well. And that also includes the reserves. The reserves today are better. The only side I agree with him 100% is the fiscal aspect, where he narrated all of them, and it is true 100%. But that aspect, when there is impaired productivity in your country, definitely your fiscal balances and space will have the problems you're having. This is a fact. Nobody can argue about this. The other point that I agree and understand is that how we spend our money as a country, the wastage, the corruption, probably inflating project cost, which is not only MPP and DC. Corruption is a problem in our country. So that aspect, we need to look at, just as Franklin said, it's a national issue. But if you look at this government, what that I'm saying is that even the 1D1F we are talking about, we might not have met our projections, but we've done a lot of them. The facts are there. If you talk about one village, one dam, yes. You talk about social intervention policies, yes. Look, now move from Nsawam to Apija. Now it's straight. Me, my constituency, but for this government, we would have been seeing asphaltic roads and streets. I'm not saying we don't have road challenges in here, so you can send your whatever there to go and check. So what I'm saying is that we have problems in our country emanating from probably Kwame Nkrumah's time. But since we took over, our additions, our improvements or whatever, they are there. But people are failing to realize and take that we live in a country that, okay, they say that good things are written on water and bad ones on rock, probably. Maybe we have also failed to communicate in a way that we have superior debate or get people on our side. They can say whatever. But what I'm saying is that the challenges we have today, nobody can take away from the fact that, remarkably, this COVID has contributed. And that if we want to restore, we want to consolidate, we want to continue, we want to actually make sure that our fiscal balances are at levels that all of us will be happy with, we need to generate revenue domestically. As to whether this option or approach, I agree. But one thing I'm also expecting the experts to come out again and tell us is that they keep on saying, oh, COVID, we got a lot of money. I'm not saying they are lying or it is a fact. But please, why can't they say that we got 1 billion, our obligations within that period was 50%. So where's the money? We cannot keep on making statements, oh, we got more money, but we don't know how much we spent. We don't know what we needed. Are we also talking about the fact that even up to now, workers are being paid in this country, they don't go to work because of COVID? Because institutions run 2-week shift? Are we talking about that? What are we talking about? Even whilst they were home, they were having free water, free electricity at that time? Are we talking about that? Are we still talking about the fact that when it comes to pro-poor policies, redistribution policies, we are having free FKIP implemented, free SHS there, yes, FKIP implemented, free SHS, LEAP, free feeding, I mean all those national health insurance,
okay. The points
all these things are there. Are we also sitting down to analyze the impact on our economy? Are we really doing that? So what I'm saying is that as a country, if we have to be independent economically or socio-economically, we should be able to take the mantle ourselves. We should be able to begin a journey that will always wouldn't have to depend on IMF, external this, external that, because Ghana, we have enough.
All right.
And two, everybody must also change his attitude, his mindset.
Point well made. Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen Amoah, Member of Parliament for his shire. So let me just take a few messages, take another break, and then Suhini comes in, and then that would wrap up this conversation. Then we can talk about journalism and media freedoms and responsibility.
Oh, I agree.
You don't have 1 minute.
I beg, no,
I'm reading messages. No, you don't even have that. No,
I'm just begging you. I want to ask this. What I want to ask
is,
asking
yes,
I want to say that if they say, right? Especially my brother says that
he has hijacked and got in 1 minute.
He hasn't said
Intimidation tactics.
I wanted to. You said you have a question.
Osafo Mafu said.
No. Time is past. No.
So you don't let me speak.
No, time is past.
So I should go. So I'm done. You can let me go. Now I have to go to the airport.
Yes.
Thank you, and give the time to him. Because if I come to your show, I'm begging for just something, so let me talk. What's the meaning of that?
Let me just take a message.
Because if somebody says strong or weak economy, You are here. We should
Can you imagine? He's getting
facts
to
and
talk.
figures should be pulled out for us to analyze.
If
If it's weak, the facts are there. If it's strong, the facts are there.
Oh,
you don't get my point.
Wait for me. Don't go yet. Efo Africa Godo from Mafidove says the government.
Can I go?
Just wait a second.
Yes,
has failed Ghanaians and they are frustrated. Godfred, if the NDC thinks the e-levy is draconian and insensitive, the most strategic thing to do is to allow MPP to implement so that if it fails, they can use it to oust them in the next election. I don't really understand the NDC on this matter. Seth Kwame from Kaso says, after putting all the blame on COVID and telling us to be honest, he failed to honestly tell Ghanaians that they also received huge sums of money from the IMF because of COVID. See the hypocrisy. Peter Mayer Hyde says, why is Dr. Amwa not telling us what and how they use the free money from the donor organizations in the COVID fund? Was it mentioned in the budget? Has it been accounted for? If COVID brought hardship, it also brought a lot of free money, both from COVID fund they launched and donors. Is that free money finished? Alan Enchantan says, my simple question is, what happened to those lawyers and other big professionals who do not pay taxes and who were supposed to receive friendly phone calls from GRA as promised by the president himself? Martin Ashama from says, the whole e-levy thing is like buying watches from the watches seller and the seller's landowner comes to demand money from you. It doesn't make sense. Emmanuel from Musu says, Godfred and panel, please, the government says they will give proper accounts on the use of the e-levy when granted. I have a little question. We have been paying toll recovery levy. Only God knows how long we have been paying it for. Have you ever had the government account for it before? For us to know the amounts left to be paid? This roadshow by the government won't wash. Were we consulted when government was implementing the free SHS and other things? Prince Henry again says, government is telling Ghanaians to tighten our belts and pay killer e-levy, but the president is still enjoying himself. Then what are our priorities? Nana Akufo-Addo. We'll take a quick break when we return. So he wraps up the e-levy conversation and then we move to talk about our own space, the media space. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the big issue. Honorable Suhini, right. You have the final take on this matter and then we can wrap it up and talk about journalism.
Yeah, so I wish Stika was here still. But, you know, listening to him, you get the impression, and he's not the only one who does that. Many of the NPP communicators are fond of doing that. When maybe once in a while we all get guilty, we get drawn into it and we do such analysis. But clearly it seems to me that progress made, you know, is viewed in partisan ways. I mean, we view progress with partisan lenses, but retrogression is either the NDC's fault or it's, you know, a national issue that we must all confront. And that for me is not the best way to go. I mean, when you look at the indicators, I gave a scenario earlier about a child who inherits so much from the father and blows it. It speaks to the indicators and the figures that you know, Stika is very fascinated about. The policy rates and the other treasury bill rates that he touts today were all projected to have positive outlook by the time that they came to power. So yes, they were all projected to have a positive outlook. So it's only a matter of time. When you have the debt worsening, when you have the exchange rate worsening, when you have your deficit widening, and you are beginning to have liquidity challenges, it's only a matter of time that all those things that are still positive, it's only a matter of time for them to also begin to drop. So that is why I spoke about the hard work that was done as a result of the homegrown solutions that were adopted that led to the recovery. And I agree with Dr. Patrick Esimin when he says that all the indicators today are either the same or sometimes worse than they were at the time that the NDC went to the IMF. He is spot on it. But again, Franklin is also right. Or I think it is the same Dr. Patrick Esimin when he says that initially the finance minister under the NDC, Setekwe, also assured us
But he wasn't going to the
that he
IMF.
wasn't going to the IMF. But eventually, the government of the day took the decision to go to the IMF. And I told you why. Even though it was ridiculed at the time that we're going to the IMF for policy credibility, perhaps it is time for us to retell that story now, for people to appreciate why that was important. Because when you hear the finance minister today, Ken Ofori-Atta, speak the same language Seth was speaking, you should question yourself, why? Because Ken Ofori-Atta is also saying that we can do it. The finance minister said Tekwe and Mahama was saying we could do it because he had the Century Consensus program. But he wasn't listened to. The government of the day at the time said, look, from the program we are coming out from, with, we can do it. This is our homegrown program. We can do it. But we didn't listen. It's the same thing Ken Ofori-Atta is saying today. We can do it. But it is only a matter of time that we will know if the international market will find the finance minister credible or his words credible to, partner Ghana to implement whatever homegrown solution that he has not even advertised yet. Perhaps it's still in his head. Maybe when you push, you hear about Tampa. But I'm saying that we are almost at the same, in fact, not almost, we are worse than we were. Just like Patrick Esumen says, Dr. Patrick Esumen says, we are worse than we were when we went to the IMF the last time. But the last time we went to the IMF, it's not because we did not have alternatives. The alternative was the homegrown program that, Franklin speaks about, where we become disciplined on ourselves. We cut our expenditure, plug the loopholes, spend within our means. That is what we were seeking to do under Setekwe. But because we didn't believe that our government was capable of being disciplined, it was forced to submit that program to the IMF for credibility purposes, so that the IMF will oversee the implementation of the program. So that is where we are today again, with the finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta saying we can do it. But do we trust our government to be able to do it? And especially over the years, when his management has proven that the appetite for consumption, the appetite for expenditure, is that high, and not showing any sign of, restraint, we cannot be sure that, yes, indeed, if we come up with any program that will expect us to be disciplined, we will indeed be disciplined with it. So, first of all, let us understand that the people of Ghana have spoken and spoken loudly, that the e-levy is not properly defined. It is an irregular tax. It amounts to extortion, and they are against it. The experts have spoken. They have challenged the imposition of such a tax on transactions when there are other alternatives that could be used. And those alternatives would have come up if proper engagements were done. Not this belated, attempt to hijack the work of the Parliamentary Committee on Finance. So the e-levy, even the figures show, will not save us from our economic troubles today. It's not enough. So when you find the governments fixated on it, you wonder if they fully appreciate the problems that we are in. Right. So they should not blame the poor people for rejecting the e-levy. They must sit back, plug the loopholes, cut their expenditure, tame their appetite, and they will perhaps get the supports and cooperation that they need for us all to work our way out of the hole that they have put us in.
Thank you very much, Sohini, for that one. And you can keep sending your messages 0549986996, 0550585832, 0549986996, and 0550585832. You can send your messages on the conversation. We're going to talk a bit about what's happening in the media space, reckless journalism.
Part of that discussion.
Pardon?
Am I part of that discussion?
Oh, certainly. You are part of that discussion. You are a journalist.
Unfortunately, I have to run, but I will make a comment before
yes,
I go.
you will certainly make a comment on that before we wrap that up. So there have been a series of incidents, for want of a better word, incidents where we've had journalists being picked up by the police. And also just yesterday, I think Oliver Bakavoma, he's not a journalist, so to say, but he was picked up for something he put on his Facebook page. The police have also issued a statement on that. He's going to be put before court on Monday. But we had the Greater Accra Police Command arrest Kwabena Bobiansa of Accra FM in connection with an alleged case of publication of false news and offensive conduct. And the police explained that Mr. Ansa's arrest became necessary after he turned down several invitations to him and others to assist with investigations. Then we also had the incident with Power FM's Oheneba Boama Beni, who was incarcerated for 2 weeks and fined 3,000 cedis for contempt of court in a case in which he allegedly made false claims against the president and the Justice of the Supreme Court in relation to the 2020 election petition. Then we also had Asepa's Mensa Thompson, who he was granted bail in the sum of 50,000 cedis after he was arrested and charged for allegedly publishing false news against the president and the Ghana Armed Forces, although he had apologized for the claim. So I'll be bringing in Martin Pebu as well as Muhib Saeed. He's the Senior Programs Officer, Freedom of Expression Program, Media Foundation for West Africa, and then Professor Kwame Kakari. He's the founder of the Media Foundation for West Africa, but these days he's a retired communications consultant. He will also join us on this conversation. We'll take a quick, insert on the Bobia Ansa situation, and then when we return, former President John Dramani Mahama has also waded into this conversation. He has sent a letter to the current president on the arrest of journalists. We'll try and make some sense of that as well. So let's listen quickly to the inserts, and then when we return, we will begin the discussion.
Whilst the case is ongoing in the Kaneshi District Court, we have scores of people here at the car park who are here actually to support him. We will try and speak to some of them.
I'm here basically to show solidarity towards our brother Bobi Ansa and to the entire media fraternity, because we see this act as something that is against, freedom of speech, that is against the media, that is against journalism, that is against every citizen of this country who hopes to have a voice and also hopes to have his or her voice heard. If we think that anybody has said anything against any individual, the belief and the law is that you process the person, you go to court, you ask that the judge intervenes. If whatever civil procedures are in place, you activate those procedures. That is our expectation. We don't expect that you criminalize speech or freedom of speech in this country. It is archaic, it is so out of place.
Your point and me family me die. I did hear me so me call social media musa. Trend say Achibobi Ansa. Say Achibobi Ansa. Me friend guy be work as say Farouk what is say Achibobi was saying I also what. And I'm saying there is some more striking force. It's me call and I'm sorry biare buy. Me buy so ampa. Ya cheno ya bedi nechi anya me adom ye gya no. But ne make catch ni say ya money bill. Sorry, ya money bill. The ya catch ni say me money hwe nechi. I
have worked with Bobie. I mean, if you remember when Asempa started, I was together with Bobie, and that's why I'm surprised. John Bodu should remember that. Samuel Oku should remember that. We're on that platform when Bobie came to Accra to settle. And so, one, if not for freedom of the press, like people like you, he has been a personal friend. But again,
So that was just a short clip from what has transpired this week. And just to add to that, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, wrote a letter to the sitting president. I'll just run through that quickly, and then lawyer Martin Pebu has taken his seat. Like, Pebu, good morning.
Yeah,
Thank
morning.
And Mohib Said, he's run away from the business we were engaged in these days. He says he's freedom of express. He's running the freedom of expression program at the Media Foundation for West Africa. But House of Folk knows what we need. But the former president's letter says that, Dear President Nana Akufo-Addo, I'm appalled at the growing criminalization of speech and journalism in Ghana under your watch in this 21st century. An investigative journalist was murdered under very troubling circumstances, yet while the Ghanaian people and the international community have demanded justice, government's inability or unwillingness to act is obvious to all. The police have virtually shelved the investigations into this brutal murder. There have also been several disturbing incidents of harassment of journalists in the line of duty. We have witnessed media establishments close down on your instructions despite many appeals to you. Now, in the space of less than 2 weeks, 4 people have suffered police action criminalizing their right to free speech. As Attorney General at the time, who led the repeal of the criminal libel law in order that citizens could freely express their views, it is unconscionable to be suppressing the rights and criminalizing the speech of citizens and journalists. It is even more worrying when the power of the state is used as a pliant tool in this intimidating endeavor. Radio and TV presenter Captain Smart was dragged from court, and although he had been granted bail, sent into detention. Another radio presenter, Heneba Boama Beni, has been incarcerated for statements he allegedly made. A civil society activist was arrested, detained, and sent to court on criminal charges, granted bail, and yet detained again for making a statement against you, President Akufo-Addo, as if to suggest insincerity behind the serious discrimination of speech, decriminalization of speech that you led. Another radio presenter, Bobi Ansa, has been arrested, detained, and charged, criminalized for speaking and making allegations against your wife. Again, last week, security personnel linked to your party brutalized a radio presenter and producer in the city of Takoradi. Such lawless attacks have today become common occurrences in our country. President Akufo-Addo, you continue to oppress the people, criminalize speech when these matters are essentially civil in nature, if you feel offended by them. It is even more sad that the Journalists Association and its senior members, many of our clergy and other moral leaders, scared because of the oppressive and dictatorial regime you are running, have remained quiet in the face of this disturbing development in our maturing democracy. This is a dangerous blueprint you are fashioning for our dear nation, and it must not be encouraged. Your actions as president have totally discredited your self-acquired accolade as a human rights lawyer and activist. Ghana has long emerged from the unfortunate past where journalists were cowed by incarceration and brutalization. I fear that if you do not take immediate action to arrest this unfortunate trend, when you exit the office of president in January 2025, freedom of speech and the free media will certainly not be counted as part of the legacy you have left behind. Signed, your brother, John Dramani Mahama. But some really strong words in this letter. And there are those who might say, does it actually reflect these incidents, Suhini? Where do we draw the line between the reckless chatter on air or what we post on our social media channels and the actual right to practice as a journalist? There are those who say some of these incidents do not qualify for what one might say is a fight against free speech.
Well, Godfrey, maybe I should start this discussion quoting the president.
Oh, okay.
This was something he said before he became president and repeated only about 2 years ago when he became president. So I'll choose the one he repeated in my quotation.
Okay.
Quote, I will say again that I much prefer the noisy, boisterous, sometimes querulous media of today to the monotonous, praise-singing, sycophantic one of yesteryears, unquote.
That was the World Media Freedom Day also.
He actually said it before he was elected, and that is why he was having to say again. So for emphasis, let me quote it again. It answers your question about whether it is noise chatter or whatever
does it answer
chatter.
the question?
It says, I will say again that I much prefer the noisy, boisterous, sometimes querulous media of today to the monotonous, praise-singing, sycophantic one of yesteryears, quote and unquote. So when you juxtapose this against all the developments that we are witnessing under him as president, you wonder if this was just like the many things that he has said to us that he honestly didn't seem to mean.
Really?
But just said them because they sounded right, but had no commitment whatsoever to them. Let me state up front, Godfred, having worked in the media over the years, that I am all for responsible free speech. I'm all for it. But let's be mindful that no nation under the earth has ever achieved responsible free speech using the coercive forces of state. It is unsustainable. It always backfires on the state. No nation has achieved free, responsible speech using state agencies like the police and the military. No nation has been successful at it. In the end, it pops. In the end, it pops. And that is why the government has to be very, very careful. It is indeed a shame that the president claims pride in his role, either as opposition member of parliament or as attorney general, in the repeal of the criminal libel law. And today, having to supervise a backdoor, introduction of the criminal libel law. And that is what President Mahama is speaking to. Some of the cases, even if they are infractions, the remedies are clearly provided in our laws. Civil action is permitted. Civil action is permitted. The National Media Commission is there to address any irresponsible speech that falls within their domain. So it's not as if we do not have, and you see, at the time that we repealed the criminal libel law, when he was Attorney General, it's not as if people were so responsible in their publications. Do you recall the case involving Harun Atta and Kweku Bako on the criminal libel law? What was the publication about? Was that above board? Was that a defense? I mean, is it? In fact, I've heard Kweku Bako say before that some of those publications they are not proud of. But it did not justify the existence of the criminal libel law. It still had to be repealed. I recall the case involved the wife of the former president then, Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings. Yeah, it was Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings. The criminal libel law case involving Harun Atta, it was Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings. And we said, what the heck? If she wanted, she could resort to civic action. And Nana Akufo-Addo was at the forefront. Isn't it ironic and shameful that today a state agency is prosecuting someone for writing something about his family and his wife?
So I want to understand this. You have a problem with him filing a complaint with the police?
No.
Is that not what he did?
I'm saying that who filed the complaint?
No, that's the thing.
There was no complaint filed.
They say reports are that. So there's no
complaint filed. Who is the complainant? We don't know the
complainant.
complainant in this case.
So it's basically the police who are taking it upon themselves.
So I am saying that it is a dent on his record. And the earlier he woke up to the reality, the better for his image and the better for the peace of this country. Look, under his watch, we have had over 100 radio stations shut down. Authorities may say as a result of, regulatory breaches. But others with very good reason have also clearly shown that it was politically motivated and targeted at critical government media.
Yeah.
You can't run away from that fact also. You have had Ahmed Swale gunned down on the street after he and his team had done a documentary exposing corruption in Ghana football, and his identity compromised by a leading member of the New Patriotic Party, a member of parliament. And as we speak, we are yet to find the perpetrators of that. You remember Edward Adeti? Where he revealed corruption at the AG office in the Upper East region, involving, the regional ministers, judge, and some Chinese mining company. In the end, what happened to him? The regional minister got sacked, and brought to the Flagstaff House. But Adeti's life till today remains in danger. You just catalogued a number of people who recently have had brushes with, agencies of state as a result of their publications. In the case of Mensa Thompson, it's even so ridiculous.
Why?
That he publishes something, he retracts, he apologizes, yet he still faces sanctions. What happens to rejoinder? The purpose of rejoinder. What happens to the purpose of rejoinder? So, if you watch that, Godfred, if you watch that, to become a president, unchallenged, tomorrow on your show, the morning show where you speak your mind a lot, when you say something and it is wrong and you come back to apologize and retract, it doesn't insulate you. A state agency will still take you on. If you don't challenge this and let it become a precedent, you can't cry foul tomorrow when the same standard is applied to you. That is the dangerous route that we are taking with this. But you see, maybe in wrapping up, I'm not surprised. I'm only disturbed that this is putting all of us at risk. Michelle Obama said that the presidency doesn't change people. It reveals who they are. It reveals who they are. President Akufo-Addo, as leader of the New Patriotic Party, chased every dissenting opinion out of that party. We spoke about it, but it was considered political talk. When he has the chance to lead Ghana, why do you expect better? As leading member of the New Patriotic Party, he chased every dissenting view out of that party, including the party chairman, the party general secretary. He chased all of them out, regional executives. So I am not surprised. I'm only disturbed. And when he told us to be citizens and not spectators, what he didn't say was that we can be citizens all we care. He will treat us as spectators.
I get the point you're making, Suhini, but I still haven't heard you make reference to responsible practice.
I have said upfront.
There has to certainly be a line.
I have said upfront, Godfred, that I support responsible free speech. That is the way to go. But I have also said that no nation has ever achieved that using the coercive powers of state.
Okay.
And that is why I have even alluded to the provisions in our law where civil action is allowed when irresponsible speech affects you.
Okay, hold on for me.
When irresponsible speech publication affects you, you have the option of going to the National Media Commission. Those are the persuasive, powers of state that we have used in the Fourth Republic to build our media institutions. It's only a dictator who resorts to the use of coercive force. And like I said, it has never worked anywhere in the world. Remember the Arab Spring? The gentleman who bent himself may not have been right. And I'm here referring to Oliver. Oliver doesn't have to be right, but let the state make one misstep. You'll be surprised at the reaction that you will get. The gentleman who burnt himself alive during the Arab Spring may not have been right about the reasons why he was doing that. But once that fed into a certain narrative, and you see, Godfred, maybe finally, ever since the resurgence of coups on the continent, I have heard a lot of discussions on media platforms and outside media platforms, dangerously contrasting military regimes with democratic regimes. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous discussion, but I've heard it. One argument, Godfred, that stands out undefeated yet, when it comes to preference for democracy, is that you have the right to criticize leadership without fear of recrimination when it is a democracy. That argument stands undefeated, unchallenged by those who project whatever good comes out of military regimes. And that is why we have to be mindful as a country that we do not take that argument away. Okay. Because once we begin to make the people feel that that very useful, strong argument is no longer the case in our democracy will have no leg to stand on, and we can only blame ourselves for, inviting that upon ourselves.
Let me deal with the legal side of this, and Martin Kpebu is a private legal practitioner, deals with a lot of cases in this realm. Like we were looking at the series of cases I've outlined. Okay, I have Professor Kwame Kakari, so let me just talk to Professor Kakari.
No problem.
I'll come to you. Professor Kakari, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the Big Issue.
Good morning.
Yes, let me not take too much of your time. What do you make of these recent incidents and the position taken by some that perhaps we are seeing an overexertion of the state power on the practice of the media? And there are those who also hold the position that perhaps the media should focus more on using their platforms for productive and well-backed allegations rather than as platforms for sullying reputations. What is your take on all this?
Well, first of all, your introductory statements indicate that what we are dealing with is a very complex issue with many different aspects to the issue. But let me just say that whenever the police intervene in matters concerning speech, press freedom, and so on, there are always tendencies that could be quite dangerous for free speech. That is why even our own constitution attempts to insulate the executive from the media, for instance. And that is why press freedom organizations have been fighting so that certain legislation on our books are either reformed or expunged. There are many, as I said, there are many aspects of the issue. The police arresting journalists, arresting people, expressing certain things on media like Facebook and so on, is problematic. However, whenever a law exists, you can expect the government or its agencies to use it. And the police are using a law that exists. You can't blame them for enforcing or attempting to use a law that exists. And as I said, I wish there was more time. I'm in a funeral, and I just got out to make these very first remarks. It's a very complex issue, and if we want to talk about it, there's so many aspects of it. For instance, the Media Foundation for West Africa attempted to organize a meeting to begin to deliberate on what to do with this legislation called publishing false news and so on. People like Akutu Ampao were a part of this initiative. But I can tell you that KIPA was not interested. The Ghana Journalists Association was not interested in the forum that we were trying to organize. You know, so as I said, there are so many aspects of it, and it is important that these developments are discussed dispassionately, because there are aspects of it that also border on professionalism and questions of accountability of the media. You know, so that's why I'm saying that it's a complex issue, but fundamentally, as I said from the beginning, whenever the police intervene in matters of speech, it's problematic and could have tendencies that may not be that good for free speech and democracy. That's what I can say right now.
I have heard some say there are options available, and so perhaps the police could have waited for the affected persons in this regard to use the avenues that are available rather than taking this upon themselves and creating the visage, so to say, of what we are seeing now and the impression that is being created. Is it not also a fine line between simply enforcing the law and then just waiting for an affected citizen to take action?
Well, you see, there are a number of instruments and mechanisms that citizens who are aggrieved by what the media do to use. A sad fact is that many people in important positions of authority and so on have consistently refused to use, let's say, the National Media Commission, for instance, for resolution of their grievances. That is one. If people feel defamed, they can go to court. That's another one. But if the police have the power to use a law, whose responsibility is it in some of these matters to seek redress? Is it the police or the citizens who are so affected or who feel so aggrieved? The police, as I said, if there is a law, well, they have a discretion of using it or not using it. When they use it, as I said, if it is not in the interest of free speech in the long run, who is to blame? The law is there. Why is the law still there? Why have we, who feel that the law could catch up with us, not done anything about it in this fourth republic? You know, so as far as the police is concerned, I certainly cannot talk for them, but as a citizen, I'll say that if the law is there, or if they have many opportunities and they choose one, and it is legitimate for them to use it, who can blame them?
All right, then. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Professor Kwame Kakari. He's a retired communications consultant, but also the founder of the Media Foundation for West Africa.
If I could just make a point on the law and who is to blame. You see, if the law is still in our books, then the executive is to blame, because it is for the executive to determine which laws, you know, are kept or introduced. So
but doesn't there have to be a strong lobby for some of these things?
Yeah, so, but sometimes, I mean, that is the policy-making process, or the law-making process also allows, you know, agenda setting.
So let me give you
the collection of...
Deal with that matter.
You see, no, the point is that it is unfair to just say that I should deal with that matter, because the Attorney General, first of all, is seized with, you know, the power to convince the cabinet, so to speak, and the entire government to either repeal a law or to introduce one. So once the Attorney General thinks that that law should not be in our books, like the President did when he was Attorney General and repealed the criminal libel law with the help of the President, it always takes the executive to initiate such laws because of the nature of our Constitution. Okay. You know, the laws come from them. I mean, it is only recently that we have started experimenting with private members, you know, bill. Even that, we are still having problems with it.
I get you. Let me come to lawyer people. So, on these cases that we have heard, let's deal with a bit of specifics. Is there a legal basis for some of looking at this?
Okay, so
the choice to arrest, place before court.
It raises a lot of hard questions. Okay, yes, I think the use of arrest, especially in Oliver's case, is premature. You see, Bobie, at least the police, if we can go by the police statement alone, they said they gave him several invitations, though we've not heard Bobie's side. So Oliver's own, especially Oliver's own, is even far more fetched. You see, it's far-fetched. If this e-levy is passed, I'll do the coup myself. Conditional sentence, the context. He's just doing advocacy for the profligacy. What we are running away from is the profligacy of the government. So then the police go and arrest and say they are investigating a coup. No, deal with the profligacy. These are red herrings. Oliver, what do? The man is coming to the country. You survey him. You do surveillance, covert surveillance. And then if you need him openly, like for those who like this arresting, yes, give him an invitation, put it out there in the media. When he comes, like, I think we should use some finesse. You see, earlier on, Professor Kerry was talking about once the law is in the books. Oh, so because in the law there is power to arrest anyhow, anybody says anything, we arrest him. Then very soon, the cells will be full. All of us will go in. There will be no space. That's not how you arrest. You see, it's a discretion. So you look at the citizen. Who is he? Who is that citizen?
What's his capacity?
Exactly.
Exactly. Profiling.
And you see, so far, Oliver has such a high public profile. Yes. So you give him an invitation. Engage. If Oliver were to turn down an invitation to come to the police station, then we'll also begin to think, oh, you mean you will not cooperate with state institutions? But you don't give him that chance. You just whisk him and look at the, obvious mistake the police are making. Please, it doesn't lie within the power of the police to take him to court on Monday. It's Sunday. The Supreme Court says 48 hours is 48 hours. So the police should check their law well. They have power to keep him for only 48 hours. Anything, it's not even, it says bring him to court within. It's not that wait till the expiration of the 48 hours and then you initiate steps. No. If you don't want to grant him bail, bring him before a judge within 48 hours. So that he can make an application for bail. Please, the police, they have lawyers. I know they are lawyers. They should talk to their lawyers. It's not Monday. If they apply to the registers of the court, a judge will sit tomorrow. The Chief Justice last year already gave a circular. You see, the context of it is that I took a case to the Supreme Court sometime in 2017. Then in 2019, December 2019, the Supreme Court gave a unanimous decision that 48 hours is 48 hours. So Saturday, Sunday, public holiday, the court sit. And I have done I've been to court at least 4 or 5 times on Saturdays. Okay? Saturdays you go, electricity, people who owe electricity, people who owe SNET, they do Saturday court. The same for Sunday. The last public holiday, 7th January, we were in court to do a bail application. It was granted. So please, let's use the law. If the police are saying they've exercised their discretion to arrest, which I have my gravest doubts about, the police should also apply the next law, which is Article 14.3. The Supreme Court says if you arrest him, bring him to court within 48 hours. You cannot pick and choose. The police have no power to hold Oliver till Monday. That would be a gross violation of the Constitution. Yes, gross violation. Let's read Article 14.3. Okay. It says, a person who is arrested, restricted, or detained, A, for the purpose of bringing him before a court in the execution of an order of the court, or B, upon reasonable suspicion of his having committed or being about to commit a criminal offense under the laws of Ghana, and who is not released, shall be brought before a court within 48 hours after the arrest, restriction, or detention. That is it, 48 hours. And the Supreme Court has interpreted that, please, the courts provide services on Saturdays, Sundays, public holidays. So they should do the needful. Though we prefer that they grant him bail. That one, you see, the police will get part of their credibility restored because this arrest is making them very unpopular. You see, something you have to gauge. These things won't take the police far, especially a case that doesn't go far. You don't come in such a high-handed manner. It's a shame.
When you say a case that won't go far.
Very overbearing. This arrest is a very overbearing decision. Very overbearing. It looks, I mean, it lacks finesse. Oliver, cool. So when he was coming, what guns and what did he bring? When you do that, you make a mockery of the power of arrest. That's not how. It's a discretion. So before you do it, you see, you watch the context, everything. You know that, this gentleman says he wants to fix the country. Let's have a constitutional, let's review our constitution. Let's stop the profligacy and the rest. Listen, he has a loud mouth. Give him an invitation. If he fails, publish it. Then you see he himself, he will be hot. Oh, so Oliver, you can climb the high moral horse and you cannot honor police. You see, so you use it's tact. Meanwhile, in the meantime, the surveillance is ongoing. National security, yes, this is the real thing they should be doing, not getting involved in arresting Bobie and the rest. You see it? No. Then the surveillance is ongoing. I mean, it makes it looks, oh, no. It's overbearing, very, very high-handed. Yes, this arrest, no. Very soon, the power of arrest will just become so commonplace that, yeah, we're becoming a police state. We will talk, but that's the mistake they're making. Look, listen, the police can never arrest all the people. Look, somebody just sent me something. A woman saying she will do the coup d'etat herself. There's another one. Then they should go pick her. There's a video going, circulating. The woman said no, she doesn't even need the army to do any coup d'etat. She and her people will do it. So they should go and pick her too. It's becoming a mockery. We all want our security. Look, Godfrey, let's not hide it. Hey, I'm number one. To be scared. We all want to live in a secure democracy. That's why we live here. That's why we don't live in any other country. It's a choice. Now you say we'll live home here. So when there are these things, don't make it look like rocket science. Hey, Gestapo style. We will show Rambo style. Come, arrest him. No. Just be refined. I think IGP needs to, he needs to have a sort of kitchen cabinet that also looks at the human rights aspect and our standing in the international community. You see, because of the places Oliver has worked and the rest, we are going to have all those people looking at us. He's worked with them. He didn't give them trouble and the rest. You see, you're looking at the UN and all those places. Okay, an employee there. Suddenly their eyes will be here. Oh, what's happening? We are losing marks.
Interesting perspective.
Yes, and that should be right. Listen, don't make it look like because it's security matter we can't talk. We are also applying the law. It's a discretion. Section 10 to 12 of the Act 30, the powers of arrest. But please, even in the police manual, the service instruction, you have to look at it. Is this a person who absconded? Is he absconding? And don't forget, look at the context. He was outside when he made the statement, right? And came in, flew in. You think if he thought he really was going to do a coup, he would fly in openly like this? Those are the things you do. So you use all those to analyze, and then you see that arrest is not the first option. Arrest is not. Maybe if you had seen him coming through some unapproved routes, you see, our borders are quite porous. That's a public, it's of public knowledge, right? Maybe if you had seen him sneaking through some unapproved, route, then you say, maybe he's coming in furtherance of his
agenda.
Azimi. But he comes through Kotoka, and you think arrest is the first thing. No, please, investigations don't always require arrest. That's a mistake. They don't always require that arrest. No, you look at each individual case and analyze it. Oliver's stature in this country, he deserves an invitation. Remember how police first got up, this Susu matter, hey, we will do this. You see how they suffered a lot of backlash and reputational damage. They should learn something from it. Please, Ghana is changed. Look, let me show you. At Champon's time, when this, Western Togoland matters and the rest. He said, please, look, he doesn't want these arrestants and incarcerating them. He was just giving us a bad name. So he said, no, don't make matters of them. Some of them, he stopped the prosecutions. Western Togoland, if you like, check under Achampon's regime.
Check for me once I do a quick commercial. When we return, then you can make that reference. The big issue, we'll be right back. Welcome back, looking at press freedoms on the big issue. Very interesting perspective you heard. Suhini's version. Lawyer Kwebu also looking at, as he's focused a bit more on the Oliver Barker-Vormawor situation. But then we come to Muhib Said, who's the Senior Programs Officer, Freedom of Expression Program at the Media Foundation for West Africa. I'm sure you'd have looked more also at the situation with the journalists and what have been your thoughts before I even come in with any questions on the cases. If you want to look at it on a case-by-case basis, you can go ahead. But the engagement of the police in this regard.
Well, I think when you were reading of the number of cases of arrests and attacks on journalists, I was like, if you gave somebody 50 chances to guess which country these incidents are happening in Africa, I'm sure that the person could take about 20 chances without mentioning Ghana. He would probably think that they're talking about Uganda, Somalia, or any of those countries where press freedom is always repressed. Ghana is a poster country as far as press freedom and freedom of expression is concerned. We have a very high reputation out there as a country that is quite democratic and respects the rights of citizens to express their opinions. And therefore, as I said, whilst you were mentioning these cases, I felt that somebody outside there who had these things being linked to Ghana will be quite dismayed. And I think that it is important for our leaders to look at things in that context, because at the end of the day, the reputation of the country outside is also very important. Now, that is not to say that we should overlook cases of unprofessionalism by the media. The Media Foundation for West Africa, as you know, has been monitoring the media space for compliance with the professional standards and ethics. And we have what we call the media ethics monitoring. Last year we were able to do that, and we recorded 2,710 ethical violations in the media. And these violations were in the areas of infractions on good taste and public sensibilities, accuracy, prejudice and stereotyping, mixing of facts and opinions. And apart from that, we did the campaign language monitoring for the 2020 elections. And we were able to record a lot of issues of unprofessionalism on the part of media practitioners. In fact, we wrote to certain media organizations on which we had recorded too many issues, and Oheneba Buama, for example, was cited copiously in our reports. But we have laws in dealing with these infractions. First of all, we have the National Media Commission, which is supposed to be a buffer or a kind of referee between the executive and the executive, the public on one hand, and the media, so that if any member of the public or any member of the executive actually feels injured by whatever a journalist has written or said, it is important to refer this matter to the National Media Commission. It is not obligatory, but between using the brute force of the police and ending up attracting bad press for yourself and selling Ghana's name out there as a country that is intolerant of press freedom, and then using the softer approach of reporting such infractions to the National Media Commission. I think that the latter, it's a far better approach. We cannot say that the media in Ghana has suddenly become unbearable. Whatever inadequacies and deficits that we are seeing today at least have been with us throughout the Fourth Republic. And when there is no provocation, there is no test of a leader's character and level of tolerance. So if we just cite the infractions and the provocations, we will not be doing justice to ourselves. It is when there is provocation, when there is a test of your patience, and you are able to bear it and also handle it in a manner that does not lead to abuses. That is where you prove that you are tolerant. If the media in any country is 100% compliant, there is no troublesome media, and there are no outspoken citizens that are too critical, then the most horrible dictator will still look like an angel because he would have no troubles to deal with. So to me, it is important for the government to, have recourse to the less confrontational mechanisms for dealing with these kind of infractions.
And it's interesting that most of these cases, or at least in 3 out of the 4, basically are allegations that the publishing the false news law, these are things that went against the president directly, or his family.
Yeah. So the fact that the publications that are being complained of mostly are about the president and his family, it also makes it quite uncomfortable, believing that the police are actually acting independently and without any overbearing influence on them. I was mentioning Ohene Babuama. He was arrested on the 14th.
Who has been cited?
Yes, for contempt. He was arrested on the 14th and detained for 2 days. And the police statements on that arrest was to the effect that he had published false news and threatened the...
Yes, false news against the president the Justice of the Supreme Court.
Yes. And threatened the president. And I think that the Attorney General felt that was a little blatant, because if we are going to go criminal for defamation against the president or insult,
it's not a crime.
Yes,
the president
that is
a
it.
Crime.
Yeah, so he now filed for contempt of court. And it is on the basis of the contempt of court that he has been jailed. If we look at that of Mensah Thompson, he's not a journalist, but we work to promote freedom of expression and not just press freedom. He's written something that on the face of it was quite reckless. It was such an important and sensitive publication that he needed to be very sure that what he was putting out was right. Nonetheless, having been, confronted by the military authorities who said what he has written was false through a press statement, he retracted and apologized. Now, after the retraction and apology, the only other legal recourse would be civil for defamation. And yet, he had to be arrested and detained. Meanwhile, the trend globally is towards discouraging custodial sentences and imprisonment and detention for speech offenses. So I think that, yes, we have issues with professionalism within the media, but the disease of unprofessionalism in the media is being cured with a medicine that is not only expired but also illicit.
I like that.
Interesting.
So the cure is worse than the disease, like the Americans will put it. Yes.
Interesting analogy there from Muhib Said. He's the Senior Program Officer, Freedom of Expression at the Media Foundation for Scaffold. Kupa, we found what you were looking for. And,
so you see
and this matter of the publishing the false news law.
Yes. So I'll just refer to the, what do you call it, the publication, General Champon. So when you're talking about this Western Togoland, you see how now we are prosecuting all the giddy. No, when the case of General Champon tried to use diplomacy through dialogues. Yes, even though he failed, but that is the effort. And what did he do when he failed? He said, hence he formed Operation Checkpoint to break the front of the agitators, that's the Western Togoland people. He involved Information Service Department, who sent mobile cinema vans to convince the others not to break from Ghana, since there was peace in Ghana. He engaged the chiefs and pressmen on the subject. Radios were distributed in some parts of the country for free. You see it? Yeah. So faced with adversity, when Western Togoland, and in those days it was even more, what do you call it? It was more intense, hotter, more violent than we see today. Yet, that is what he did. He used diplomacy. And so why should we come, how many years on, more than 40 years on, any small thing, hey, arrest, anything, please, arrest. It's not popular amongst us. It's investigations. And you don't always need an arrest to investigate. No. You see, I think somehow, because, and you see, citizens, please, citizens, let's rise up. You see, when you've not been involved with the police, you think anything that anybody says, oh, the police should invite him. Yes, ask for invitation, correct. But those who say arrest, let's be careful. Somehow I get the impression that it's because those who say arrest seem to be loud. Maybe the police think arrest is popular. No, arrest is not popular among citizens. It's investigations we want. Look, Koku Anyudohu was said to have made such statement. Where did it end? When they arrested him, Gestapo style, they went to search his home. Where did it end? Where did it end when Koku Anyudohu was arrested? So the police are about to suffer another heavy embarrassment. Don't use arrest. When they arrested Koku Anyudohu, took him to his house, took his phones, giddy. Where did it end? No, you don't do that. You learn from your mistakes. Be gentle in it. Go step by step. Learn from your mistakes. We are all citizens. We all make mistakes. Learn from your... Why did they... Anyudohu matters doesn't end? After all that he suffered in custody. So you take a citizen in, you deprive him of liberty, especially for a case where from the beginning, though we don't know what Oliver is holding, but please, using the norms of plausibility, Oliver is the last to lead a coup d'etat in Ghana. So you learn from it, then you say that, no, let me be cautious, let me be very circumspect, okay? Let me use the law well. So arrest is not your first option. I think the police have goofed, and we need to tell them. Okay. Yes, so there's the journalists, yes, they are all tied in, because you see, you know, now journalism is not only those of you who have been to journalism. Yes. We are all helping, because we're saying that if we don't speak up, it will eat all of us. The monster is coming, the kaka is coming, see how it's eating a few. If we don't stand up and show them that we are not scared, they will eat all of us up. You see, so the point is that journalists have a duty, Article 162, Clause 5, to hold government accountable. Citizens also have a duty to uphold the Constitution. That's Article 41. I think because time is going, we cannot read all. Yes, that's Article 162, Clause 5. It says that journalists, the media, you should uphold government accountability. And naturally, in doing it, mistakes happen. Government, day in, day out, don't governments make mistakes? They are in office, don't they make mistakes? Do we go to arrest them straight away? When was the last time a minister was arrested for mistakes that he made? When was the last time we arrested a certain minister for mistakes that he made? A certain minister.
So are you?
So the point is that by all means, investigate. See, what we are not getting, there's no time. Let's not mix this thing. I'm not here to defend erring journalists. No. I'm talking about the procedure. Don't just you arrest him, throw him in custody. You even take him to court, or court grants him bail. Then, just because you think some of the masses like arrest, then you machinate to keep the person in custody, like Captain Smart's own. Court granted him bail before 11 o'clock. National security, they were pussyfooting. So, then the court had to close. So then they kept him in custody till the next day. That is what we must speak up against. So please, let it not be lost. What we are saying is the abuses. Oh, we want crimes investigated. I think that one there is no-brainer. If the police don't do their way, if they don't investigate crime and prosecute, there will be chaos. That's not what we are talking. So, you see, on occasion like this, when you spend time talking about the obvious, we lose all the time. We can't talk about the problem. So some people, they say, oh, but if not talked about reckless journalism. No, what we are saying is that what they've done is disproportionate. That's what we are addressing. We don't have 5 hours. If you were to say, Martin, we are going in the next 5 minutes. If you were to say, oh, Martin, you have 30 minutes. Then I could have started. Oh,
no problem at all.
You see?
I get you.
So please, especially, sometimes people, after we've left, people say, we didn't caution reckless journalism. No, that's not the matter right now. You can't deal with the two at the same time. There's been a disproportionate use of state power, okay? You arrest when it's not necessary, or court grants bail, then you involve in delay tactics to keep the person in custody. That's what we are addressing. By all means, reckless journalism, yes, let the system take its course. As Muhib mentioned, there is National Media Commission. And the National Media Commission has done a number of cases. You can go there. So now, do you see the situation we are left with? We repealed the criminal libel law, but we are back to square one. So it means the value is the same, because through Section 208, that's publication of false news, we are now arresting journalists willy-nilly. That's bad. It's a retrogression. Yes. Some of the arrests, let's be careful. We don't need arrests as a first thing, please. Investigations, yes, by all means. Oh, every case you want to investigate, why not? That's why the police are there. But when you start with arrest for a case that is going nowhere, it becomes a mockery. Then it becomes high-handedness. It becomes very overbearing. It's the overbearingness that we need to speak up against. We will not take it. Then they will arrest all of us.
Okay.
Yes.
Points well made on that. Let me talk to Franklin. Kujo Franklin, I'm sure you've heard Lawyer Kwebu on this matter. He's broken things down a bit. You've also heard Muhib on this matter. You can wrap this up for me.
Oh, sure. And thanks to them for the wonderful submission. I think CDD, Imani, and Asila have also just issued a statement to the effect that we need to start asking questions whether we are gradually introducing in a subtle manner the criminal libel law. I think we need to ask ourselves that hard question. I think, as Martin has said, it appears as if the state is becoming too, should I call
sensitive.
It's too sensitive. And, and he makes a brilliant point about the issues that are generating these rather interesting statements that have become the subject of arrest. Is the issue of, the issues around accountability and the fact that the state itself may be failing. But that's not a justification for making certain statements, by the way. I mean, we've stated in our statement that it is important that media people also make use of the RTI and ensure that they are quite careful in the statement they make. But as Martin suggests, it is disproportionate. The response is disproportionate, and I think the state should tone down a bit, because the more people feel that anytime somebody speaks, they get picked up, you might get to a situation where you'll be overwhelmed, really, because what people perceive in their thoughts are probably more dangerous than what they may expressly say. And that, I think, the state should be wary of. Otherwise, look, it could also be diversionary when the real issues that matter, the matters of state and the development of the country, the delivery of effective public services should be respected or should be attended to. So all I can say is that we should edge cautiously and tread cautiously. Otherwise, the state itself might be seen to be too panicky, and that doesn't bode well for all of us.
All right, thank you very much, Franklin Kujo, and thank you very much, Muhib Said, and also Martin Pebu, for your thoughts on this matter. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Big Issue. My name is Godfred Akutobuafo. Have a good weekend.